My name's Laureen Tipps. I live on Cove Road in Ingram Cove. Also, Gary Mans is on as well. He lives in this cove. Um, I recently moved into this cove, but I've lived on and around this lake my whole life. And as Anne mentioned before, she spoke of watersheds and storm drains. And what I've noticed is we have a rather large storm drain that dumps right out next to the beach where all the families of this community go swimming. Now, I know if I understanding, and Gary can help me out here, they've all, and we all contribute to having our cove treated with chemicals for the for weeds. But as we know, the storm drains tend to dump out a lot of bacteria and God knows what from the streets, from all the homes and the roads. And I even noticed the other day, I was over there and it's starting to look pretty ugly out of there. What I had noticed since the aeration system was installed over by River Styx, and it was always known to us my whole life as we've always called it the mud hole because it was so disgusting. And now last year with that aeration system, I have never seen that area so clean in my entire life. It's amazing. And I was mentioned it to Gary about the possibility, and I mentioned to Colleen, I sent Colleen an email that we would love to get the aeration system set up in our cove over here as well. Whatever it's doing, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. And just for the sake of our little part of keeping the environmental issues under control with the lake, how would we go about doing this? What can we do to try and get the system installed over here? Is there a process? Maybe you can help us out, or maybe you have some questions for us as to what Gary has been doing so far with us keeping this under control ourselves.
Fred, can you add a little something to that? Because maybe in one of our next grants, we can put it into the grant. And
yeah, so there's a couple things going on with that. So you're right that once the aeration system was installed in River Styx Crescent Cove, it did open up relative to aquatic plant growth. Now, to be perfectly honest, we saw that throughout the lake. So River Styx Crescent Cove definitely improved. And I know the dominant plant in River Styx Crescent Cove is Eurasian water milfoil. That species has very weak roots. So what may have happened was the aeration system helped to dislodge that plant. And that's one of the reasons why it cleared up. But the other thing too is we did notice throughout the lake in the second half of the summer, there was no harvesting at all last year, except toward the very end of the growing season. And yet, overall, weed conditions were not bad at all throughout the lake. So there's a couple things we're doing. Number one is we're going to do a aquatic plant survey through the course of the summer to evaluate, how effective the aeration system is relative to other areas that do have a lot of plant growth, to confirm whether or not it is specifically associated with the circulation system. Because typically most nearshore circulation systems are designed to keep the water moving to minimize and avoid the accumulation of halves. So before I would recommend you install an aeration system in Ingram Cove specifically for plant control, we need to confirm if that is indeed the case. And that's what we would be doing. The other thing too is, I know there is some Eurasian water milfoil in there, but there are other species that have stronger root systems in that area. Such as curly-leaf pondweed and tape grass. So if that area is dominated by some of those other plants, you may not see the positive benefit there the way you did in River Styx Crescent Cove. So the one thing I would say is we will be collecting data this year to evaluate that and confirm that. The other thing too is we could absolutely consider another nearshore aeration project in a future grant for that area. I mean, Ingram Cove is one of those areas we've been trying to do some work in that for years. You mentioned the non-point source pollution that comes in from the watershed. Well, a lot of that is, in addition to the bacteria, like you mentioned, it's nutrients and it's the solids. And so when you have a lot of solids going into an area like that, it makes the water depth shallow, and that means more sunlight hits the sediments. That means you have more plant growth. And so one of the things we've tried to do in that part of the watershed was we tried to get some grant funding to install one of those multi-chambered systems to collect a lot of that runoff before it goes into Ingram Cove. And so that's one of the things that we'll be looking at as well. Back when we tried to do that, we tried to put it adjacent to the stream, and that was a big no-no with DEP. But now if we look maybe a little further upstream on the county road, maybe we could team with the county to install some sort of structure there. So in terms of potential grant funding, I could see doing something in the cove itself. Maybe we, again, depending on what we see relative to plant growth with the aeration system for a full season in River Styx Crescent Cove, and what type of plants you have in there, that may be one of the solutions. And then the other solution would be to cut off the source of the nutrients and the solids, which is coming in from that stormwater, installing some type of structure up gradient.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked to see how large that storm drain was, and the fact that it's dumping right out on the beach where all the children and the families all swim, which was a little concerning to me. But, the cove, I feel, I would love to do something in this cove to keep it clean and just, I guess cove by cove, we have to address these issues, but we would certainly like to be put on the schedule at some point, if you may.
Absolutely.
Hey, Fred, can we get anything with this stormwater drain? You said you had some others where you put in carbon filters or something. Does that, because when we get a good rain, the cove literally goes brown and it's all that silt, soot, whatever. It just flows right out of that storm drain. I don't know if they've ever tried to do, I know the plan was to do some sort of upstream catch basin, as you said. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work, or it's not being cleaned out. I don't know what happens when you get enough sediment. It's got to go someplace. Our primary, that milfoil is really a lot of what we get in here. Mm-hmm. We do get the eelgrass more towards the end of the season. And I don't know, there was something that was a project that was discussed in the beginning of this where they were looking to see if they could vacuum it out or something. Was that, they were doing a demo? Can we get in on that?
They will be doing a demo of doing sonar and then hand pulling plants. They will be doing a demo in May for that, and that's another technique that could possibly be considered. And the other thing too, as you mentioned, the carbon stuff, the biochar. That's actually, we've had a lot of success in terms of seeing the biochar clean up areas, and Ingram Cove may actually be a good candidate because it's sort of this separate little cove that's cut off from the main body of the lake. Yep. And the other thing too is I just received a couple presentations from the company that does biochar. They're starting to play with using it and laying it over the sediments themselves. So I can talk to them about that. But one thing we could certainly talk about, and it wouldn't be that expensive, is to install some of the biochar in that area. It would certainly help with algae, and it would clear up issues with algae. Now, if it makes the water clear, you may actually get some plant growth. But what we've been seeing at Memorial Pond and Duck Pond is you sort of getting in this cycle where the biochar removes all the nutrients, the plants start to grow, but then the biochar removes some additional nutrients, and then the stuff falls back down. That's what we saw at Duck Pond and Memorial Pond last year. But the biochar is something, even if we could, again, I'll talk to the manufacturer because I literally just got this presentation this morning, how they're laying it over the sediments. If you're trapping the nutrients that are in the sediments, those are the nutrients that really spark that plant growth. So that's something we could certainly play with. But I got to say, that's pretty brand new and pretty experimental. But the nice thing about the biochar is it's not that expensive. And then when you're done with it, you can use it as landscape mulch, which is one of the reasons why a lot of the towns are really interested in the material between its green reuse and its low cost.
Okay. So could somebody come out and look at this drain? Like what would be the process to get something going?
Well, two things. So we're up there we're up at the lake on a pretty regular basis. I can talk to, some of our field people and see the next time a crew's going to be up there. They can at least take an assessment of the catch basins. Now, again, keep in mind that in the past we tried doing something parallel to the stream, but because of permitting issues, that was a problem. If we go up on the road itself, that's something that could be doable, but now you're talking about a county road, and I mean, obviously you would have to get the county involved, but the one thing we can do is take a look at that existing catch basin and see what condition it's in, because, I mean, a couple things were thrown out there. One is it may just need to be cleaned out on a more routine basis. But the second component is if it doesn't have a drop inlet, if it's just a standard catch basin that lets water in and water out, that all it's doing is moving the water, it's doing nothing to remove solids or remove nutrients, then a different basin would need to be installed. And that's where you're talking about more sort of grant funding and a larger project and you obviously want to get the county involved in that as well. So the first thing we need to do is take a look at it and see what condition it's in and what type of basin it is.
Okay.
But I know Ingram Cove it was in the original restoration plan and it's in the existing plan. It's something that we've always seen as a site in need of some tender levee.